Labat Africa expects high earnings. The cannabis investment group that has transitioned into a fintech investment company expects its interim headline earnings per share to more than double to R5.68. Net asset value per share is projected to jump by over 1,000%. Last month, Labat sold its cannabis healthcare sector businesses to its CEO and a director following a number of operational challenges tied to regulatory uncertainty within the sector. Looking ahead, though, the group plans to focus on high-growth industries such as AI, ICT, and data solutions. Business Against Crime South Africa has welcomed the release of the Madlanga Commission's interim report. The organisation, founded by business in 1996 as a special purpose vehicle to engage and support governments on crime-related matters, says that the publication of the report marks a rather important moment for South Africa's broader efforts to strengthen accountability, rebuild trust in public institutions, and advance reform of the criminal justice system. The interim report is being reviewed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who expects the Commission to refer any matters that appear criminal for prosecution. BACSA has affirmed its readiness to support the broader criminal justice system reform process emerging from the report. Whistleblowers who suffered financial and mental harm after exposing irregularities and corruption at the National Lotteries Commission will not be compensated financially. This despite 20 million rand from the organisation's surplus having been set aside for reparations in this regard. Now, the NLC says that it has adopted a non-financial model which prioritises restoration over compensation. These include wellness and psychosocial support initiatives. The reparative measures will only apply to former NLC employees who were employed between January 2017 and January 2023. Whistleblowers who were not staff members are not included in the final settlement. In the meantime, though, DA spokesperson on Trade and Industry and Competition, Toby Charms, says he will not rest until whistleblowers are compensated financially. The U.S. State Department has criticized South Africa for the recent detention of U.S. officials in the country. Two U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services refugee officials were briefly detained following suspected immigration violations concerning Kenyan nationals on site. 7 Kenyans were arrested and deported for illegally working on processing applications for Afrikaners for refugee status in the U.S. The U.S. maintains that its officials, who have since been released, were providing humanitarian support. Earlier this year, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to grant refugee status to Afrikaners following claims of a white genocide in our country. This issue continues to weigh on the U.S. and South Africa's already strained bilateral relations. Further afield, now TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance has signed binding agreements with 3 major investors to sell just over 80% of the company's U.S. assets to American and global investors to avoid a U.S. ban. Here's some more detail on that story.
Social media giant TikTok is selling just over 80% of its U.S. assets in a move to avoid a ban in the country. Chinese owner ByteDance said Thursday that it had signed binding agreements with 3 major investors, Oracle, Silver Lake, and Abu Dhabi-based MGX. The deal will create a new U.S. company called TikTok USDS joint venture. ByteDance will retain a stake of just under 20%. The move is a big step to end years of worry about TikTok's future in the U.S. It had faced a ban from January this year under a law requiring it to divest its assets in the country over national security concerns. Donald Trump also tried to ban the app during his first term, but later became a fan, crediting it with helping him win last year's election. He opted to delay the January ban upon taking office this year. The deal's details align with a plan unveiled in September. In a memo to employees, TikTok said it would enable, quote, over 170 million Americans to continue discovering a world of endless possibilities as part of a vital global community.
And the $6 billion merger of U.S. President Donald Trump's social media firm and Google-backed TAE Technologies has now raised ethical questions. Let's take a look at this for more.
U.S. President Donald Trump's social media company announced an unusual $6 billion merger with TAE Technologies, a Google-backed nuclear fusion firm. The news that Trump Media, which operates Truth Social, was getting in the nuclear energy business came just days after fusion industry leaders met with representatives of the U.S. Energy Department asking for more federal funding. The growing electricity needs of the technology industry have revived interest in nuclear power. However, despite decades of efforts, nuclear fusion, often seen as a potentially cleaner and more reliable energy source, has yet to produce a commercially viable reactor. The chief executive of TAE, Michael Benderbauer, was among the leaders who met with U.S. energy officials after the department formed its first ever fusion office. After his return to office this year, Trump's close relatives have pursued ventures leveraging his political power and policy shifts. For instance, the Trump family has piled up billions in crypto-related wealth as the president throws his support behind digital financial assets. Greater support from the federal government could potentially boost the value of the fusion investment as well. Trump has 114 million shares in Trump Media, roughly 40% of the company. In the new merger, his ownership stake would be roughly 20%. Trump Media mainly generates ad revenue off of Truth Social and has consistently lost money since it began.